The Entrepreneur's Library, episode 62.
Welcome to the Entrepreneur's Library, the only book-centric podcast that reviews all the top-selling business books and shares authors' perspective firsthand. This is your resource to finding the next great book that will enable you to grow personally and professionally. Welcome your host, Wade Danielson.
Thank you for joining us on the EL. Today we have John Baldoni, author of Moxie, The Secret to Bold and Gutsy Leadership. Welcome, John, and thank you for joining us on the Entrepreneur's Library.
I'm happy to be here, Wade. Thank you for your kind invitation to be on the show.
Definitely. Will you take just a moment to introduce yourself and tell us just a little bit about you personally?
I'm John Baldoni. I'm an executive coach and author, about to talk about my brand new book, Moxie, which is number 13 on my list. I'm chair of leadership development at N2 Growth, and my passion is instilling leadership in others and providing them pathways to success.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. Now let's jump right into that book that you just mentioned, Moxie, The Secret to Bold and Gutsy Leadership, which was just made available for purchase on October 7th, 2014. And John, we're going to move quickly, but here are some of the top questions our listeners would love to get answered. And the first one is, what was the inspiration behind writing Moxie?
Well, Moxie, as I describe it, is the guts, gumption, and determination to succeed. Moxie is an old word, and we often hear it in old movies, which are a favorite of mine. And I always picture this scene of kind of a down-and-out prize fighter, and he's going into the ring for one last paycheck. And people around him say, boy, he's got Moxie. And I think all of us have the potential to be Moxie. The inspiration for the book really came out of the financial crash of 2008, when we saw a lot of senior executives sort of throw up their hands and say, gosh, I've never seen things so bad before. And they did not demonstrate any sense of resilience. They really didn't demonstrate any kind of perseverance. And they certainly didn't reflect Moxie. So resilience and perseverance have been themes of mine. I've written about them in other ways, but I never captured what I wanted to do in Moxie until now. And I want to talk about how leaders' guts and gumption will help them and their teams succeed.
So, John, like you're saying, that there's a lot of different books that might come out on a similar type topic. And this next question is really, what differentiates yours? What makes your book different regarding others on the same topic?
Well, there are many books on leadership. I don't know that I've seen a lot on this particular topic. What I do a little differently with Moxie is I've turned the word Moxie. We talk about guts and gumption, and the stories of the people I profile all exemplify the Moxie. But I've turned it into an acronym, and there are 5 attributes that contribute to the idea of Moxie and contribute to good leadership. And I take them from the letters of the word Moxie, and it's M for mindfulness, O for opportunity, X for X factor, which is essentially your character, I for innovation, and E for engagement. And all of these things work together to prepare a leader to lead not only him or herself, but also lead their teams more effectively. So I think that's a different spin on it.
Great. So, John, how do you suggest someone actually engage with your book? Is this one that the super productive entrepreneur can jump in and out of based on what they need, or should they really start from the beginning and read all the way through?
That's a good question. Most of my books are kind of jump in at any point. This one has a good flow to it, but certainly you can jump in at any point. I would say at least read the prologue and then jump into the chapters that make sense. You could, of course, read the stories out of order. They would help you. And there's some good interviews that I've talked to CEOs and thought leaders on their ideas about the topics that we explore in the book. And there's also some very handy graphics which provide some iconography, navigation tools getting through the book. And it's also plenty of hands-on and practical tips. I have a little appendix handbook at the end of the book, and also at the end of each chapter, there are some provocative statements and then some questions to ask yourself as you read. How can I implement mindfulness? How can I demonstrate a sense of opportunity? How can I put my character into action? What does it take to be innovative? And how might I engage better with my people? So that's the format for the book.
Perfect. And John, now we have a great background behind what the book's all about. This is my favorite part, where I'm really just going to hand over the mic and ask you to take this reader slash listener completely through your book and let them know what it's all about.
Well, great. I never have the opportunity to do that except in formal speaking engagements, Wade. So this will be fun for me. So I'll take it top to bottom. In the prologue, I talk about what Moxie is, and we talked about it. It's the guts and gumption and determination that leaders use to succeed. And there's some components that are built into it. Moxie, when you think about it, it's that fire. Leaders with Moxie, that they burn with a desire to make something happen, good things happen for their people. They also have drive, which is their sense of determination. They are ambitious. They want to make a positive difference. And as we talked about, they're resilient. There's no shame in being knocked down. It's what you do next that makes the real difference. And we talk a lot about this sense of resilience. And so I think that's important. It's your bounce back factor. And leadership, as I always say, does not exist in a vacuum. So leaders have to have street smarts. They got to know what they're talking about, and they have to be of the world in the sense that they need to have real world experience, and more especially be willing to listen to their people. So, if leadership just exists in your head, it really doesn't exist at all. And, there are three things I think that go into your sense of Moxie, and I use this a lot. I call it the 3 C's. It's your competence and your credibility and confidence. Competency is what it takes for you to do your job. You wouldn't be in an executive position if you weren't competent. Credibility. Do other people believe in you? Okay, and that's very important, because if there's no credibility, who's going to follow you? And the bottom line is a sense of confidence. You have to have confidence in yourself. Others have to have a confidence in you. And here's the most exciting part. Can you instill confidence in others? That's very, very exciting. And that's a very special attribute. And I think leaders with Moxie do all of those things. They have fire, they have drive, they have resilience, they have street smarts, and they're certainly competent, credible, and confident. And all of these are important. So as we walk through here, let's take the first M, the first chapter, which is M, mindfulness. And in this, I talk about a hero of mine, which is Nelson Mandela. He exemplified mindfulness because mindfulness is the sense of being in the present, living in the moment. But also, for a leader, it's not just enough to live in the moment, not just to, smell the roses and to know what's going on. You have to be situationally aware. I'm a golfer. And golfers, not a very good one, but golfers are situationally aware when they play the game, because they address the ball. What's the lie? What's the wind? Am I in the rough? Am I on the fairway? What's my target? Is there a tree in the way, as it often is with me? Am I in a sand trap, as I might be? All of these kinds of things. But in a leadership position, a mindful leader is, how are my people reacting? What do I have to do to engage them? What are the questions they're facing? How can I provide answers? How can I help them solve their issues? So that's why I chose, and Nelson Mandela manifested all of those things. And in mindfulness, so we talk about mindfulness is rooted in purpose, and purpose is a bedrock concept for leadership. It's something I wrote a previous book on it called Lead with Purpose. And Moxie is sort of the twin, an add-on to the further development of the concept of purpose, and that rooted most especially in a sense of mindfulness, because intention is critical when it comes to mindfulness. What do I want to achieve? How will I achieve it? And why is this the best outcome for my people? So mindfulness is, it comes from within, but it radiates around the people around you. Our next chapter is opportunity, and this is fun. I told you I was a golfer. So I begin the chapter with a story of Ben Hogan. Ben Hogan is no longer with us, but he was a very successful golfer in the 40s and 50s. And what was remarkable about Ben Hogan is he came from a very hard Scrabble background and worked his way up on the tour. And in those days, in the late 40s, people didn't make, you didn't make a lot of money on the tour, but he loved golf. And so in the old days, he won the 1948 U.S. Open. And then he was in a very serious train accident. He sort of fell asleep at the wheel and got stuck in a train. A train hit him. Doctors proverbially said he'll never walk again. Well, not only did he not walk again, he he walked on the golf course and regained his game and won the 1950 U.S. Open at Marion in Pennsylvania. So an extraordinary story of resilience. I mean, we talk about Moxie. You look it up in the dictionary, you got Ben Hogan there. So leaders, on a leadership sense, leaders need to be opportunistic. They need to be looking for what's the next thing. And in the book, I had the opportunity to talk to one of the seminal minds, I think, in leadership today. His name is Adam Grant. Adam wrote a wonderful book called Give and Take. And he says there's givers and there's takers. And I think as a leader, we have to be more on the give cycle. And leaders are those who create opportunities for others. And that's where that giving can nurture it. How do we create those opportunities for other people to succeed? So it's important to do that. My next chapter is the X factor. And X factor is rooted in character. And as my icon for that, I chose Margaret Thatcher. Now, I know she's somewhat of a controversial figure, but this woman demonstrated what it is to be Moxie. First, to demonstrate what Moxie is, first of all, she was came up in the Conservative Party in post-war Britain, where it was, to say the least, it was certainly not women-friendly. You know, she lost her first 3 elections, but kept persisting at it. She had a career as a chemist, and then she, as typical of women of her age, became a homemaker, and her husband was a dentist, was a very successful oil executive, but she yearned to get back into politics and finally won. And even when she won and entered Parliament, she was shunted toward the side because the Tory party, as probably Labour was at the same time, was very much an old boys club. So, but I liked her determination, her grit. Every job, every assignment she took with vigor and enthusiasm and succeeded. I think what we know her most as sort of the Iron Lady. Notably, she supported Ronald Reagan's stand against the Soviet Union in the 80s. And also, Britons remember her for her grit and resilience in standing down the trades unions, which had put a stranglehold on British production in the early 80s. And so that's what she knows. And this is not an anti-unionist tract, don't get me wrong, but when any party oversteps its bounds, there can be repercussions. So anyway, Margaret Thatcher, to me, exhibits what it is to be grit and gritty. So this X factor is rooted in character, but it's sort of the right stuff of leadership, which comes about all different kinds of factors. I talked about compassion. It's important for a leader to have empathy, to understand others. Also, I think there's a great leavener, and it's humor. You got to have a sense of humor. Life is tough, but good leaders that I've worked with, they always have a sense of humor about themselves, and that makes them more endearing. That shows this kind of vulnerability about them. Leaders also have to have ambition. Because ambition can be perceived as a negative. Well, too much of ambition, too much of anything can be perceived that way. But leaders, you have to put yourself in a position of success. As we talked earlier about seeking opportunity, you need to be seek out that. It's also leaders need to be curious. Those successful leaders are those who are asking questions. It's the question why. And in some ways, you might want to say that leaders sort of never really fully matured. They're kind of like 4-year-old children asking why. And so they want to know things. They're curious. Tell me more about this. And this is a powerful quality because if we're not curious, if we don't ask questions, we kind of get blindsided by the future, what's coming down the pike. And of course, in resilience, as I talked about earlier, you've got to have this sense of resilience and backed by a sense of courage, standing up for oneself, making things happen. And in there, I have a quote from John Kennedy. He said, the courage of life is often the dramatic spectacle than the courage of the final moment. But it's no less a magnificent mixture of triumph and tragedy. A man does what he must in spite of personal consequences. And that's what courage is all about. It's a powerful statement, and he exuded that in his own life. At the same time, part of your X factor, it's not just me. You got to be aware of what's the other side. You got to take stock of oneself. And so this is where Moxie and the concept of mindfulness come in. Don't take yourself too seriously. Make sure you seek good counsel. Make sure you surround yourself with good people. So that's critical. And we move on. Our next chapter is innovation. And in there, my profile is on Sergio Marchionne, who is the CEO of Fiat, which also owns Chrysler in the U.S. And Sergio is a unique executive. He was Italian born, but raised in Canada. So he has a very different European / North American perspective. Rose through the ranks at Fiat and then took over the auto company when it was in failing health and restored it to a degree, and then did the same with Chrysler. And Chrysler is a big success story now. And I think one of the things that Sergio Marchionne brought to us is a respect, I mean, being a European, but also with North American, had reverence for American made things, American ingenuity, and he revered that. And part of that, when he came to Chrysler, it was how can we revive the brand? And that's with American people, American ingenuity, American engineering, all of these good things, merged with some ideas from Fiat, of course, but he just respected what individuals could do within their own culture. And it was a very innovative way of looking at it. Innovation is, I like to think of it, it's the application of creativity. All of us have a chance to be creative or have ideas. It's what you do with those ideas that make sense. And sometimes we are intimidated by the word innovation because there's a theory about big I versus little I innovation. We think we have to hit a home run with an innovation. We have to have a whole new product, not just a product, a whole new product category, a new iPod, a new TV, whatever it is. And well, that's not exactly what innovation is. It doesn't always have to be a breakthrough. It can be a process improvement, little I innovation. And I talk about this, and one of the folks I talk about in the book and I spoke to is Rich Sheridan, who runs Menlo Innovations, and innovation is built into the company. And they're a software designer. Here in my hometown is Ann Arbor, Michigan, and Rich is here, and their company is small, but they have an international reputation. It's a collective of people. It's very collaborative and cooperative. And Rich said one of the things he said about innovation, he said, if you want people to be creative, if you want people to innovate, you need to drive fear out of the organization. Sometimes, we put unnecessary burdens on people and Rich talks about how to create conditions for people to succeed. And so innovation is rooted in that. Our final chapter is engagement. And in the first 4 chapters, mindfulness, opportunity, X factor, innovation, more or less you could think of these are a leader's personal mantras, things he can do for him or herself, but they're more inner directed, but with a little bit of a twist on the outside. Engagement is how a leader gets out of his or her skin, how he or she interacts with the people around them. And as you well know, leaders achieve very little by themselves. They have to work with and through others. And so, and this chapter explores that. And it was a chapter that was a lot of fun to write because and my profile for this is Dolly Parton, who is a wonderful, we all know her as an entertainer and a singer. And, an entertainer with a follower that she has certainly knows all about engagement. How do I win the hearts and minds of my people who will buy my recordings and come to my concerts? And she's a very giving person. She's been very financially successful and an entrepreneur. I mean, she started Dollywood and some other things, but she's also a philanthropist. And she remembered as a child growing up in a hardscrabble background that books were scarce. And so now she's known as the library lady because she goes around. She has a program for how libraries and schools can get books free. And she participates in this program, and some people know, it's children, young children know her as the library lady, and she gets a kick out of that. So I really liked her, and so she's certainly an example of engagement. And in this book, in this chapter, I talk about how leaders reach across and understand the needs of their people and deliver on them. And that's really the root of engagement. And, engagement is kind of a $6 word that we consultants use, but really it means, do people like coming to work and do they enjoy what they do? That's really engagement. And it's a very simple proposition, but sometimes we in management get things so screwed up that no, people don't want to come to work, and no, they don't like what they do. So it's up to a leader to reverse that paradigm and make it comfortable for people to want to be at work and do their best work and feel not simply as workers, but as collaborators. And so that's really the secret of engagement. And I talk about ways and strategies that you can create engagement. So taking together Moxie, all of these principles, the mindfulness, opportunity, X factor, innovation, and engagement, they're all rooted in the sense of Moxie, which is your guts and gumption, your determination to succeed, to make that positive difference. So Moxie is definitely a concept right for our times. And in my coaching practice, it's something we talk about a lot. It's your resilience, your confidence, and how you blaze a path for others. Because, in leadership, it's not about you. It's often about the people that you lead. So what is it you're going to do for them? So I appreciate this, Wade, and quick run through of the book, and it's been fun.
Yeah, John, that was a very solid summary of the entire book. And now this next question is I think kind of mean, but it's going to ask you even take one step further, and that's if the reader can only take one concept or principle or action item out of your entire book, what would you want that to be?
I think that all of us have the ability to be resilient and to demonstrate determination. Don't be dissuaded by obstacles in your way. Look at obstacles as opportunities, and how will you get past them, and how will you succeed in your goals?
Perfect. I think that you kind of just answered my next question, but I'll ask you anyway. And I guess I think what you just your quick brief answer to that one was a quote in itself. But next question is, do you have a favorite quote from your book?
Oh goodness, you got me prepared, and I'm off wind. I think it's I don't know if it's anything I said. I think it's just kind of the concept of Moxie. Is that fire in your gut. It's that determination to succeed. It's your sense of resilience, and it's the street smarts you apply because you're aware of your situation. You're a believer in the people around you, and you want to make that positive difference.
Excellent. And John, I believe that folks that read your book can have a paradigm shift happen in their minds to help them move forward. And so his last question is there a book that you've personally read? Doesn't even have to be on the same topic as far as Moxie or leadership in general or even entrepreneurship. But is there a book that you've read that really has created a huge paradigm shift for you and helped you move forward in a big way?
Well, I'd have to say there are many, many books, but let me give you a book title that I recommend almost to everybody that I coach. And it's a book is written by Marshall Goldsmith, who's a friend of mine, and Marshall actually endorsed my book. And he wrote a New York Times best-selling book called What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And it talks about our pitfalls of relying too much on our previous abilities and how we need to develop new skills and adopt new thinking in order to succeed as we progress in our careers. So what got you here won't get you there. That's what I would recommend.
Excellent. Thank you for that recommendation. And John, before we depart, can you recommend the best way for our listeners to get more information on you and your book, Moxie?
Right. Well, the book is available on Amazon as well as in your local bookstores, even if they have to order it. The best way to learn about me is simply my website, which is johnbaldoni.com. That's BALDONI, johnbaldoni.com. Or we also have a special website for the book where you can watch a video, me talking about the book, as well as some downloadable tools and resources for you. And it's called moxiebook.com. And if you can't remember any of this, just Google my name or Google Moxie, and it'll pop up. So thank you.
Perfect. And John, we'll put all of this in the show notes. So I think there's a huge percentage of people that listen via their phone, and they're in the midst of doing something, or they're in their car or whatnot. So we put everything that you said in the show notes so that they can go find the links there. And again, John, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your creation, your book with us.
Wade, it's been a pleasure, and I thank you for this opportunity.
Thanks again for listening in today. If you would like to get your hands on Moxie or any of the other resources mentioned by John, just look at the show notes at the elpodcast.com.
Looking for your next book idea? Head over to the elpodcast.com, where Wade shares his amazing resource, the top 10 business books recommended by over 500 entrepreneurs, with you for free. That's the elpodcast.com. Till the next time, keep it on the EL.